Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Screen. Today I am thrilled and excited to be joined by Farnaz Khaki-Sadigh, very respected and renowned costume designer. So just to start off, could you give us an explanation kind of from your perspective of what you do and what costume design is?
So basically, costume design is really it's part of building the characters and the stories and their arcs within a film or a TV series or anything like that. Kind of are telling a silent story along with the story that is in the script. A lot of times, like when you look at what the character is wearing when they first walk into a room or to any occasion, it sort of, at first glance, you sort of get an idea of where this person has been, where this person's going, sort of what their status is, what their position is in life, etc. Things like that. So it really is about just really adding to the story by building the characters and giving them a visual, giving the audience a visual clue within what the character is wearing.
Right, and sometimes that can be a very subconscious thing as an audience member, because before a character speaks or we learn anything about them, it's actually one of the first things that we kind of see.
Yeah.
And we may not even be thinking about it, but if their clothes are a little bit ragged or if they're really fancy, you build an idea of who that person is.
Yeah, and also a lot of times some costumes tends to also be a mask as well for the character.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes a facade that they have created, just like our everyday life. When you are in a good mood, you wear certain brighter colors.
Right.
When you're in a sad mood or not feeling your best, you usually want to wear your comfort clothes and things like that. So we kind of create these images with what we wear, and that's what we do for the characters. We create these images of who they are, what they feel, where they've been, what they're doing, just to kind of help the story go along.
Right. How you entered this field, and was that something that you picked up on at a young age when you were watching films, or how did your early fascination with this industry come about?
I've always loved clothing and everything to do with it, and I did watch movies, and was fascinated by everything that they wore. But originally in my career, I think I was 10 or 11 when I decided that I wanted to actually be a fashion designer.
Okay.
So I wanted to go into the field of fashion. And I basically took every step throughout schooling and, taking side courses, anything I could do to just kind of develop my skills so that I could go to fashion design school and become a designer.
So what age did you decide I want to be a fashion designer?
I was about, I think, 10 or 11
Okay.
when I did that. So when I decided that that's
And
my
then
career,
everything from there was sort of geared towards
basically
that.
geared towards that. When I graduated high school, I did 1-year diploma in fashion design and merchandising, and then I was supposed to go to New York to go to FIT. But I had some stuff that came up in my life that I couldn't do the transition to New York, and so I had to stay in Vancouver. So I went to UBC, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my business degree, so I have some knowledge of business,
Right.
so that when I do
Smart.
start my line,
Yeah.
then I have something solid to kind of guide me along the way.
And that was great because so many people when they're passionate about something, it's well, I'm only going to do that one thing.
Yeah.
But it's great that you had that foresight. I need some foundational experience in
Yeah.
business or whatever it is. What was your first transition from school into your first job in costume design? How did that come about?
I started a business with a friend of mine from school where we had a costume shop where we built and designed costume for
Okay.
theater shows around the city.
So you went the entrepreneurial route.
Yeah, we went the entrepreneurial route, and so we sort of made connections there and built networking and just kind of got offers from
Right.
different programs. But we both got so busy with the actual design part that neither of us could really stick around to run the business, and neither of us wanted to sacrifice our design career
Right.
for running the business. So we decided, we're okay, we need to focus on our design career. So I just kind of transitioned from there.
And I guess in that process of building that business, you'd made some connections and then you were able to start working.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, like, what advice would you give to a young, like, aspiring costume designer who is just getting started and they're trying to look for that little like gap in the door so that they can break their way in?
The best advice I have is just get in there. Like I did a lot of like volunteering and just getting my foot in as much as I could with any production, whether it was paid or not paid, or like a day here or a day there, just get in there. Like, contact like film schools because they're always looking for like, somebody to come in, help with like film projects. And it's really a nice way to build a network that way. I met a lot of great people through the UBC Film and Theater program that are now like, directing bigger projects and things like that. So you grow with them.
Yeah, you invest in the relationship.
Invest in the relationship and really just get in there. And you learn so much by just getting in, volunteering, learning all the aspects of what goes into the project at the lower budget shows.
Yeah.
Or the non-existent budget shows.
You probably get a little bit more, autonomy and power as well, because it's like you get to do a bit more what you want. There's less departments to go through and less hoops to jump through.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's just the stuff that you learn because you have to do everything yourself. It helps in sort of like when you do have the money and you can do it on a more grandeur platform,
right?
Then you can really sort of like build up on what you've learned and those skills. It's very helpful. But networking, I think, is the best.
Yeah.
I reached out to so many people and I got rejected so many times. Like, I've been told like when I was starting off, it's like, well, why do you want to do this? And, you have a good career in theater. Like, why do you want to get, into film? And why do you want to
That could be really discouraging.
Which is discouraging, right? At that moment. But the thing is, like, if it's really what you want, you just have to keep pushing forward for it. And you just have to keep trying. And, out of the 10 doors that may close on you, one will open.
So fast forward to now, you've worked on shows like Space Force, Van Helsing, The 100, and of course Avatar: The Last Airbender, and a bunch of other things that we could go all day about. That's pretty incredible. It's very inspiring. Those are big shows that have huge fan bases. All those shows are obviously very different, but what can you speak to them? Like, what are the similarities in terms of your process? Like, when you jump on board a project, let's say you've gone through that interview process, you're a good fit. How do you start? Like, what's your process like?
I mean, with anything in film and theater, like, you start with the script.
Yeah.
Start with the story. If I can have basically like all the scripts for like if I'm doing a series and I can have all the scripts, then great. But sometimes you don't get that option. So you may get one or two.
You work with what you get.
And you just kind of work with what you have. But really like just start really like reading the story and really just absorbing it and understanding it. And then make a bunch of questions, ask questions about the characters and their story arc. And then you go to the writers and the directors and, you're like, what is this person's story?
Your main point of contact will be the director and the writers. Is that typically how it works?
Usually, director, showrunner.
Right.
Showrunners usually is the head of the writing department as well. So the writers, because they're the ones who really created the characters and are developing them, and that's where you really want to get your information from. It's just really understand the characters. You don't always get the backstory in the script or their future story. You just kind of get this like little snippet into their life, and you either have to sort of like imagine where they came from and where they're going, or you kind of ask questions to try and figure that out. Because that really helps to figure out how that person got to their present time and how that present will affect where they're going. One of the biggest things for me is that when an actor is wearing a costume, it should feel like a second skin to them. It shouldn't feel like, they should feel comfortable enough in it that they forget that they're wearing it.
Yeah.
And really by that is really just making sure that you've created something that is really part of that character and it fits in with how the actor envisions their character and how everybody else envisions that character. And when you create that, that's when, like they just kind of it feels natural.
Yeah.
When they're fidgeting or like they're constantly like
They
doing
just don't feel
this,
comfortable.
it's just they're not comfortable. It doesn't feel right because it affects their performance as well.
For sure.
So it's really important to make sure that you do actually collaborate with the actor.
Next question. I want to stick with Avatar just briefly because it's such a big, exciting, and new show. Yeah. What was the most challenging part of being a costume designer on Avatar?
The biggest challenge on that is taking the fan and the lore and combining it with historical accuracy.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest challenge for me because we wanted to be, I'm a huge fan of the
I was going to ask, had you seen it before you got involved with it?
I was a huge fan before I even started working on the show. So for me, it was very important to make sure that it was true to the lore and that the fan would see it and,
be happy,
but also be recognizable for them. But then at the same time, I really wanted to make sure that all the cultures and the history that's referenced in the animation was accurate. And trying to combine those two was a huge challenge because sometimes it didn't fit properly, and sometimes it was just sort of like, okay, well, there's, this one nation has references from like 5 different cultures, which are not really in real life. They don't really look the same, or they don't work together very well. So it's really just, and then just creating the realism of it, and it's still
so larger than life, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of.
How big was the department, the costume department on that show?
My department was over 90 people.
Okay.
It's the biggest department I've had ever in that show. Yeah.
That must be a lot to think about.
It's a lot of people to manage, and there's a lot of,
And so I guess that's a whole nother thing. We don't have too much time left, but there's so many things I want to ask you. That's like a whole different side of it, like the management and like the leadership side.
Yeah.
How did you develop like those skills? Is that something that came naturally to you, or how did that how's that been?
Yeah, a little bit of it comes naturally. Apparently my crew says I'm bossy. In a good way.
Yeah.
But
90 people, I think you have to be a little bossy.
But also, I did finish my business degree, so that does help with the budgeting aspects and the managing aspects and all that stuff. So understanding that portion of it. I can say 20% of my job is probably creative. 80% of it is really just running the department and making sure we meet deadlines,
logistics
and finances and crew management and things like that. So, it does help to have that sort of management experience.
So when it comes to learning and studying in terms of watching films or watching a TV show, do you find that you drive yourself crazy looking at the costumes the entire time, or are you able, if it's a good enough movie, are you able to switch that off and just enjoy the movie, or not really?
I try very hard, very hard to not think about it, but it's kind of like second nature, and I can't help it.
Yeah.
Even, whether it's good or bad, you see the flaws, you see sometimes it's like, oh, I wonder how they did that. That looks absolutely amazing or phenomenal. It's like, it just, a lot of those things as well. So it's not always negative stuff that you pull. It's there are a lot of positive stuff that you look at it and you're like, wow, I really like that. Oh, that's a really cool, way to do that. Or, I would have never thought about that, but hey,
Are there any films you've seen recently, or your favorites of all time in terms of costumes that just totally blew you away?
I would say the most recent one would be Dune.
Oh yeah.
It's
so incredible.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today, but
you.
I just really want to sincerely thank you for coming on the show. It's been a delight talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Beyond the Screen. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe.